A very good evening to everyone. Welcome to today's Techignite speaker series organized by NTU College of Engineering titled Supertree Grove, Rising Beyond Challenges. Before we begin, we'd like to inform you that this webinar will be recorded and shared on the Techignite's official social media platforms and official website. So feel free to rewatch and share this webinar after today's session.
So today we're honored to have Mr. Vaughn Lee, founder and executive chairman of homegrown building construction company, Expand Group of Companies. Named as Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2018, he is also an alumnus of NTU's very own School of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And today he'll be sharing more about his entrepreneurial journey and the engineering behind his company's iconic projects like Gardens by the Bay. May I now have the honor of welcoming Mr. Vaughn Lee to begin his sharing. Mr. Lee, please. Hi, Mr. Lee. Sorry, just to interrupt. Sorry, you have to unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Good. Thank you. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar where I'll spend the next 45 minutes to talk a bit about myself and also to introduce you a little bit more to the construction industry. So I myself, I have like to share with you about in the next 45 minutes this Supertree Grove project that we do. Today, the title of the seminar, our webinar, is Rising Above the Challenges. So I will touch a little bit on my growth as well as the next project that we are doing, and then the potential projects that your people, when you all start to embark on this engineering, will be able to look into it. Okay, some background about myself. Okay, I'm the founder and the director of Expand Group. Expand, we are predominantly now in the construction of HDB BTOs project, as well as a government infrastructure project. At the same time, we also deal with a few residential development as a developer. So in the beginning of my career, where I started when I was young, I was always been good with math and science. As such, I knew that someday I would end up pursuing something related to engineering. The only issue was which school I should go to. I first graduated from NJC in 1988. In 1988, the only option for aspiring engineering student was to first join NUS Common Engineering Program before entering specialization courses in either NUS or NTU. However, in 1991, the year after I completed my national service, NTU was established. This opened up new pathway for obtaining an engineering degree in Singapore. Being in the pioneer batch of a new institution appeared greatly to me, so I decided to hop on this great opportunity and join NTU as the first engineering student. Deciding to enter NTU instead of NUS was one of my best decisions of my life. I love being able to establish new tradition, leaving a lasting legacy that would persist for generation after me. It gave me the sense that I was working towards something bigger than just myself. And first, gave me the thought that I want to do something big with my life. And 30 years later, I'm a proud alumni of NTU. In 2020, on the 30th anniversary of NTU, a commemorative book was created to celebrate this landmark accomplishment. In the book, a special feature was written for some of the school's most outstanding alumni. It was called 30 of 30. I was greatly honored when they chose to feature me as one of their special 30 personnel. In NTU, I began my first year in Common Engineering course before eventually joining Civil Engineering when I was in my second year. In my final year, HDB held a recruitment drive, and I signed up. I went for the interview, and offered a job. Soon I graduated in 1995 with a bachelor degree in civil engineering after a good time, and I decided to begin my journey in the working world. After I graduate, I joined as a project manager in HDB in charge of construction projects as a government officer. And I worked there from 1995 to 1998. Life at HDB was manageable and I had a blast working there. However, I soon began to hunger for more in my life. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, and as a family, we're barely scraping by. I want to afford better for my family and eventually decided to leave the public sector and join the private sector in search of better opportunities. At the time, my eldest brother, David, has a signage company. The business, however, was struggling. He was working 60 hours a week and yet was not able to earn enough money to feed even his own family. I knew something better could be done. I thus decided to join him in the fight for the business success. We would do the science for botanic garden and other opportunities given to us. We have some success, and I soon realized that we have reached a dead end. The business was not very scalable. And no matter how many projects we had, project margins were simply very low. Even we are able to corner the entire signage business, our turnover would just be a pitiful amount. We were too simple and too low in the supply chain. That is when I knew I wanted to start a new business. Being a trained civil engineer, the natural next step was to join the construction industry as a main contractor. One of the main advantages of choosing to start a construction company as opposed to a manufacturing company is that you do not need to have a lot of capital upfront. As an engineer with the professional training that you receive, you will possess a lot of knowledge and experience that can be utilized in place of upfront capital to generate your business. However, as a manufacturing firm, the only value you can generate is from the goods that you create. Therefore, the less money you put in, the smaller your factory, the less workers you have. Therefore, in year 2000, I decided to start my construction company. I have to make a lot of decisions. We took loans from the banks to fund the projects that we are bidding for. And if we are lucky, we will be given a job. I may make sure that the job was completed on time, and we manage it with active management. We really have to control our costs and to pay off our staff, suppliers, and also support our larger family. When the company has struggled, I told myself that the most important thing is to deliver a good piece of work, because then people will always recognize your work and the company can start to develop more connections, a better track record. More people will want to work with us because they want that we can get the job done right. From there, I started a journey of our 15 years plan. From 2000, when we start the company, we have this 15-year plan, and we have the acronyms GSSS that stood for Growth, Strength, and Sustainability. Using this acronym, we split up the 15 years plan into 3 5-year sections. The first 5-year plan will focus on growing the company. BCA has a grading for contractors that restrict the kinds of contracts a contractor can tender for. The first 5 years, we will focus on growing the company from its grading of C3, which is the beginning, the lowest grade in the construction industry, to as high as grading as possible. This would allow the company to bid for bigger and bigger projects and allowing for better and greater turnover and opportunities. With this in mind, I strategized and directed our main attention to alteration and addition projects, where cycle time is shorter and allow us to complete the project within a year. And in every year, we will then be able to submit our track record to BCA so that we will be able to get our upgrading of our grading every year. And in year 2005, right on schedule, the first 5-year plan was completed. The company has achieved a grading of B2. This has allowed us to tender for projects up to 13 million, and thus a viable, stable foundation was laid for the next 5 years. The second 5-year plan will focus on strengthening the company. Now that the company was able to tender for large projects, my main effort would be directed at improving our staff. Rapid growth without good management is a recipe for bad bad performance. We focus on ability rather than quantity, and this has begun to slowly groom and develop a board of directors and managers that will form the strong head of the company that will lead the company as well as we continue to grow bigger. There was also emphasis on hiring engineers that we could potentially groom and nurture to take up managerial roles. We aim to have strength at all levels of the company that will remain dedicated and involved in the continued success of the company. In the year of 2007, Expand has achieved a A2 rating. We went from a tender limit of 650,000 to 85 million, all in the span of a short of 7 years. We have been upgraded every single year without fail. However, we have no time to be complacent. We still have the highest grade of A1 to try for. On Expand 10-year anniversary, the second 5-year plan was complete. After 3 years spanning building up our strength, we achieved it in the A1 construction BCA grading in the year 2011. This grading places among the ranks of the top 100 of the many thousands of construction companies in Singapore. And we are very proud of the whole team that has put in the effort and the time and the dedication to make this happen. And I knew this was going to be the start of the bigger and better things and a new frontier of projects that's coming to be undertaken. With this A1 rating, our tender limit was now unlimited. We can tender for any project, no matter its size. I felt that a major factor that contributed to the company's rapid growth was the fact that I myself was a trained engineer. This means that I could personally understand the technical requirements of every project, train and guide my engineers to the required standard, and together perform to the satisfaction of the client. We're now on the final section of the 15-year plan. The last S stood for sustainability. Over the next 5 years, the emphasis would be on sustaining the growth and strength that we have attained over the last 10 years. We will no longer be operating based on the principle of cheaper than the cheapest and instead pivot the business in another direction. Client would now choose us based on our reputation, track record, and the company would eventually face with all the good growth that we can achieve. The company eventually will then be able to, under the new sustainability model, improve in productivity, adoption of technology, and the performance in terms of management would be the core of the business. This would allow clients to view the company as a premium contractor. The company would no longer need to compete based on price and could rely on our performance instead. This also aligns ourselves with the government push to change their method for awarding contracts. They would now assess each tender contract based on a new price quality method. No longer they would just award the contract to the tenderer with the lowest cost. Quality was now exceeding value as well. In 2010, we also joined the Enterprise 50 and we were rated the top 21 company in the Enterprise 50. By the end of 2015, the 15-year GSS program was finally completed. Under the program, we grew to become an A1 contractor, created a strong core of engineers, a strengthened management, and also able to elevate the company to higher level of sustainability and profits through investment in productivity and technology. As a result, we are fully prepared for big projects in the hundreds of millions. To give a perspective of the breakneck growth of the company, in 2011, we began our HDB BTO project. The first project was valued at 157 million. And in 2000, when we began our first project, we only had the first project at $40,000. In the span of 10 years, the value of a single of our project has increased nearly by 4,000 times. In 2015, we finally reached an amicable milestone. Our total work order and completed project has crossed the $1 billion mark. That's why from being ranked 21st in the year 2010 and the Enterprise 50, we are able to be placed 6th in 2016. We were 3rd in 2017 And eventually in 2018, we were actually ranked #1 in the Enterprise 50. And that is the story of the company. And I'd like to bring you and talk about a very iconic and recognized project, the Supertrees. I'll be a little bit more technical in this part of the portion of the presentation, and I hope that will appeal to the engineers that you would like to be. The project is to construct the energy center, arrival cluster, and the Supertree Grove. The construction of the Supertree Grove will be the focus of today's presentation, and the Supertree Grove consists of 12 main super trees and the surrounding sky walkway. When we present and began the project, we were well into the sustainable phase. Thus, we look into many alternative options to improve productivity and safety. This means adoption of new materials as well as significant changes in the way we construct our project. The Supertree comprises of 4 major parts created by structural engineer Atelier 1. First is the reinforcement concrete cores, which is the internal vertical structure that uphold the super trees. Then you have the trunk, which is a steel frame attached around the reinforcement concrete core. Planting panels and then installed on the trunk in preparation for the planting of the living skin. And then lastly, we have the canopy. It's designed to look like an inverted umbrella. The canopy was assembled and hoisted via a hydraulic jack system. To construct this, we have deviated from the typical construction method. Rather than casting the concrete core on site, we use precast construction methods for all the main core. So what does the precast construction method mean? Precast concrete is a construction product produced by casting concrete in the reusable mold or form, which is then cured in the precast plant, transported to the construction site and lifted into place. This can be observed by the many different layers of core as seen in these pictures. In contrast, cast in place concrete is poured in specific form and cured on site. Under our new emphasis on quality, using precast concrete system offered many potential advantages over on-site casting. Precast concrete production can be formed on ground level, which helps with the safety of the project. There is greater control over material quality and workmanship in a precast plant compared to a construction site. Being able to stack up the completed precast concrete rings is construction work greatly. With a greater control over material quality and workmanship, we are able to ensure a fair face finish of the precast core panels on both internal and external surfaces, according to the specification of the architects. What this means is that the concrete looks completely smooth and have no blemish on its surface. These forms in a precast plant can be used hundreds of times before they have to be replaced, often making it cheaper than on-site casting when looking at the cost per unit of the formwork. A similar construction method was also adopted for the super tree, the CO5, which is the tallest tree among all the super grove. Mechanical and electrical compartments have to be constructed and included in the inner core. Precasting is thus favored as mold can be examined and checked at the production floor much more readily. The modules of M&E pipes and ducts can then be pre-examined and installed in one continuous operation from the bottom to the top. Sharp concrete edges can also be maintained during precast demolding in the factory. The choice to house the M&E compartments in the inner core was a very delicate one. Choosing to do it this way helped to overcome space constraints that were being faced as the compartment has been installed after the completion of the inner core and outer core. Precasting thus allows us to enhance productivity greatly. As a builder, we also have a very effective solution to some of the technical constraints. As an example, our decision to precast the Supertree outer core wall, the original cast in situ designed for the 3D configuration of the spiral wall would have been highly inefficient and would have resulted in a massive productivity on site issues. To better and easier to install the precast section of the circular wall, we use a trapezoidal guider system formwork. The efficient and light section improve handling and installation at high levels. It is also well suited for circular wall construction works with mast climbing platforms. We also applied many new innovative techniques and technologies. Two are the examples. The first, we use a new technology called air tube formwork that allow for forming up precast structures joining. The second is also through the implementation of precast partition walls. This helped to do away with the wet trade curved wall, brick wall construction as originally intended in the tender, reducing the site skill mentionary requirement. In pursuit of environmental sustainability, we also feed the super trees with environmental technologies that mimic the ecological function of real trees. This helps to make the super trees eco-friendly and sustainable. We use photovoltaic cells that harness solar energy, similar to how trees photosynthesize. Then we also create a rainwater collection farm within the super tree to use in irrigation and fountain display so that we can conserve water. There's also one super tree that helps expel the non-toxic fumes from a biomass boiler, where plant waste from the garden and other parts of Singapore is burned and converted to fuel. The burn waste also powers a steam turbine, which helps produce part of the energy needed to chill the flower dome and the cloud flowers. In this way, we minimize the energy used from external sources and make Gardens by the Bay self-sufficient. The vertical structure of super trees themselves also provide a framework to sustain air plants, tropical flowering climates, and ferns, which can provide water harvesting and the light displays that everyone is familiar with. So with some of the challenges, constraints, and innovation we employ at the super trees, and I hope that that will give you some interest to look at being an engineer. And now I would like to go a little bit more close to you. Some of you might be wondering what being a civil engineer and what getting a civil engineering degree will entail you to. Most civil engineering graduates typically start their career with the construction or structural consultant industry, as I did. And you will be welcomed into graduate scheme. Depending on the size of a company, you may be asked to choose a specialization earlier or later. Larger employers will hire graduates straight into a specialist division. In contrast, smaller companies rarely operate beyond 2 to 3 specializations, and their graduate engineers are expected to involve in all of this. Civil and structural engineers are typically stacked out by either a consultancy or a contractor, and the working environment can be quite different. For consultants, your core responsibility would be design structures and follow up on design-related problems once building commences. You'll be expected to stick with a project from start to end, and there will be a close working relationship with clients, with them sometimes even wanting you to manage project for them. Works will largely be office-bound. For contractor, your core responsibility will be to realize consultant design once it's finalized. Contractor also supervise their team and the implementation of designs. Occasional collaboration with specialist subcontractor, working closely with consultants and involve on-site work. If it's a startup as a consultancy, your typical start with design assistant or data gathering under the guidance of a senior engineer. Working for a contractor, in contrast, may have you on-site overseeing the work on a segment of a project. Alternatively, you may also find jobs with specialist contractors, such as companies specializing in coastal and marine work like dredging and reclamation, offshore installation, and specialist work like piling, and even like we earlier mentioned, like precast work. Civil engineering doesn't merely confine you to just more houses and roads. There's a variety of other industries where graduate civil engineers are in demand. Airports, unless you're involved in completely new airport project, which could take years of preparation, your typical school will be involving modifying and improving existing facilities, such as runways and taxiways, maintenance, cargo hangars, and terminal buildings. Bridges, we do not just have bridges, we also have viaducts. Building call for a high level of expertise in structural, highway, geotechnical, and environmental engineering. Engineering in this field typically work in multidisciplinary teams. Structural specialists, for instance, prepare the superstructure designs, while geotechnical specialists will work on the foundation. You may look at buildings with sustainability now a key consideration for the construction industry. Civil engineers may be invited to work with building services experts to design and produce enduring structures that comply with environmental regulations. You may also look at coastal and marine engineering. Marine engineers have helped Singapore to develop urban coastal areas to withstand rising sea level and erosion. They specialize in sea defenses, the hard defenses such as concrete barriers, and soft defenses such as man-made beaches. Building and maintaining ports, offshore wind farms, tidal energy facilities fall into this scope as well. Energy and power, power station, electrical towers, solar farm, and oil platform is a fraction of the projects that you can work on as an engineer in this field. This job is also about designing, building, or decommissioning the infrastructure needed to create and transmit energy. In environmental, you also play a possible advisory role in project, giving counsel on the ecological impact of the project and ways to minimize environmental damage. You can specialize in areas such as flood risk, geometric, and chemical disposal. Geotechnical engineers oversee the structural foundation of building, making sure that the groundwork is solid and stable enough to withstand the weight of the structure. They use field data to perform site survey, design substructure, oversees on-site construction work, and offer advice on modifying the land to help support the project. Postgraduate study is highly recommended for this field despite its specialist nature. Highways, this specialization is primarily concerned with finding ways, both temporarily and permanent, to reduce traffic congestion and improve road safety, as well as lessen the environmental impact of highways. This area of work may also encompass the construction of bridges and tunnels. Offshore engineers design and build oil production platforms, subsea structure, pipelines, permanent and temporary anchorage, along with various deep sea mining facilities. This encompasses feasibility studies, site assessment, foundational and structural design, supervising installation and operational management. Rail engineers, we need a lot of rail engineers. Design, install, maintain infrastructure for our railway, MRT. Tunneling mainly requires tunneling specialist, structural and geotechnical engineers, and involve elements of underground engineering. Rock tunnels, shaft, caverns, underground station, for example, fall under the domain of the tunneling engineer. Engineers working in this field will need to take into account of project safety, cost, location, ensuring it has minimal impact on nearby buildings or the surrounding environment. We have water and public health. This line of work is about providing clean drinking water to properties and treating wastewater economically. Engineers in this industry design and implement drainage system and energy efficient treatment plants, as well as find solutions to prevent urban flooding. And plenty of specialization means that there's something for everyone. A civil engineering will give you a variety of options and choices to enable you to develop and contribute to an industry that you have interest in. There are many opportunities in the construction industry or in the construction sector. As part of Singapore plans for the future, the government is investing heavily into many mega projects that will define and supercharge the industry as a whole for decades to come. The construction sector is certainly not old or draconic and has bright prospects in the future. I would be like to share and point out some exciting plans that the government has in Singapore. Firstly, the government is planning to develop Changi region in a massive way over the next few decades. The plans to develop Changi region will focus on three areas: the Changi Aviation Park, Changi City, and the Changi Airport Terminal 5. A fifth terminal for Changi Airport is in the pipeline. The airport expansion will see a third runway added, allowing it to run on the three-way runway system by the mid-2020s. An aerial view of the eastern part of Singapore showing the area where Changi Terminal 5 is constructed over here. A new town will also take place of the current Paya Lebar Air Base, when its assets were relocated to Changi in the 2030s. Approximately 800 hectares of land, the equivalent of 5 Toa Payoh towns, will be freed up by the relocation. When completed, the 360-hectare Jurong Lake district will be the largest mixed-use business district outside the city center. It promised to house a sizable residential population so that more people can work closer to home. Plans to include new waterway in the eastern shore of the lake that will form a third island within it. And stretching more than 30 kilometers, the Great Southern Waterfront extends from Pasir Panjang to Marina East. You will create about 9,000 to 15,000 housing units along Singapore's southern coast and include a continuous waterfront promenade with green and open spaces. You have an area of 2,000 hectares, twice the size of Punggol. Singapore is currently building a mega port in Tuas, which is said to be the world's largest fully automated terminal when completed in 2040. The port is being developed in 4 stages, with the first stage set to be operational this year. And then artist's impression of the mega port, which will be the size of the Ang Mo Kio town and double it. Tuas mega port during the early stages of development will comprise entire 1,400 hectares of land, making it about twice the size of Ang Mo Kio town. The port will be able to accommodate the largest container ships, along with bigger ones that have yet to be built. So why would you pick civil engineering? There's a pathway, and many of them, for engineers to attain great success. From beginning as an engineer, you will eventually become a manager, and from there, you could be a director. And it's just simply not true that engineers do not earn as much money as bankers, lawyers, and doctors. If you have the ability, there are a lot of opportunities in Singapore, especially considering the current market and the condition. The value of construction industry in Singapore has increased a lot compared to 20 years ago. The value of construction industry has increasing at an exponential rate, with pre-pandemic demand for this sector standing at 14.5 billion in 2019. And big project in the past could be worth 10-15 million, while the big project today could be worth 300 to 500 million. This is due to the increased scale of projects as well as the need for many new aspects not considered previously, and as well as environmental sustainability, among others. Therefore, if you possess the ability to control, manage, and deliver a $500 million project, and assume that you have a reasonable profit margin of 5%, you will be looking at a profit or margin of $25 million. And you work hard, you plan well, you execute meticulously, and there's no doubt you're able to achieve great things as an engineer, and especially as a civil engineer. Aside from monetary incentive and financial success, there's also a lot of self-satisfaction that can be garnered from working in the construction industry. In my personal experience, there's no greater feeling than coming back to previous project and seeing that the impact your building has had on the community and the nation as a whole. From the thousands of families that occupy the HDB flat that you built, to the millions of people viewing and admiring the stripper trees that you have constructed, they all serve to fill you with a great sense of pride, honor, and satisfaction. As an engineer, we may not save lives or develop the next generation. What we do is to turn a house into a home. The development that we construct gives Singapore its identity, cultures, and traditions are developed around the neighborhoods that we erect. I've never once regretted my decision to be a civil engineer, and I hope I can inspire some of you to take the same path I did and take over the legacy that I will eventually have to leave behind. For any one of you still choosing your degree, I would strongly suggest you consider civil engineering. There are bright prospect in your future if you go down this path due to the massive amount of development plans Singapore has. And from a personal development standpoint, you will also feel great joy knowing that at the end of every project, you are leaving behind a product that will undoubtedly benefit not only the people around you now, but also for the next many generations to come. There's no job in this world quite like a civil engineer. To sum it up, I have been in this industry for since the time in graduate 1995 to now, close to 26 years. And a lot of enjoyment, satisfaction has kept me strong and still going. And I hope that I will be able to continue to work hard so that if any one of y'all are able to become a member of this industry soon, I'm more than happy to welcome you all to join our Expand company as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your insightful and inspirational sharing on your company's accomplished milestones, that the dedicated process behind constructing the super trees, as well as the diverse range of industries that our prospective students can look forward to after they graduate. So we will now be moving on to the Q&A segment. So for our audience, we would like to bring your attention to our QR code at the bottom of the screen. So this is for you to scan and input your questions. So do remember to include the hashtag Techignite or written in small letters on Slido to input your questions. Okay, so to start off, Mr. Lee,
yes,
as the brain behind super trees that transform the urban landscape of Singapore, so I'm curious to find out what are some of the ideas that you can see coming that will transform Singapore future's landscapes?
I think a very interesting experience to share is when I travel overseas, and some of the overseas airports actually distinctively have a lot of advertising panels and a big screen of our super trees. So in other words, super trees is a project that can bring Singapore to the world and the world to Singapore. As a small country in Singapore, this is a very, I would say, iconic and ability to allow Singapore then step out of our small country and go on and achieve more engineering opportunities in the world.
Definitely, we definitely feel patriotic whenever we see like super tree being shown to the rest of the world, like bringing Singapore known to the other parts of the world as well. So also another question I would like to ask is like what are some of the considerations that you have or like challenges that you have faced during the whole construction process of the Gardens by the Bay? Apart from super tree, like what are you can share with us more about like what are some of the challenges?
Okay, if we all, maybe a lot of audience may not aware, the super trees is constructed on the former, they call it the Marina Village, where they used to have bowling center, food and drinks, F&B, beverages, outlets. And it was actually a reclaimed land to begin with. So when the Garden by the Bay started the plan and construction, we went into a no-man land, so to speak, where we have to start everything from scratch, building up the basic infrastructure such as the access way and start planning to build all the structure that was in the plan. So some of the major challenges is to plan properly on how to do the site utilization, as well as some of the requirement to ensure that the foundation are being correctly and properly constructed before we start off with the superstructures. So the challenges is all in part and parcel of the basic project planning, where when we are talking about, we need very strong and experienced civil engineers to come in to plan early and also to execute the project according to the plan. with all the resources that is available at those times. So this is always a case where we talk about where we started as a company. We want to build up our strength, and after building up the strength, you need to have the ability to sustain the strength that you build up to continue to perform, ensuring that the work is correctly done, and also with a good productivity, and also it has to be in the latest requirement to suit whether it's environmental sustainability or the requirement in terms of the quality and productivity. So this is quite a lot of consideration to do at the beginning of the project.
Yes, definitely. So also we have some questions for you on Slido as well from our prospective students.
Sure.
So they are curious to also find out, so how did the idea or vision of Supertree actually come about? And what is something requested by the tender, or did your project or did your company have a mindset of it really? Like, yeah, or you have like a rough gauge of what is it going to be?
Okay, to begin with, the Garden by the Bay is a massive development. I think the entire development is in the excess of more than $1 billion. So Supertrees is part of the entire Garden by the Bay program, where you have other projects like conservatory, and also, I mentioned about the club forest, which is done by another very honorable and good contractor, Wahab. So expand ourselves, we have tender for the project that is on the Supertree Lion Grove, where we have this super tree that raised up to 50 meters. If you have the opportunity, if you can take a lift now, you can go up to the top of the super tree, and there's actually a restaurant on top of the super tree. So when we start tendering for the project, we were very skeptical about ourselves whether the government would be able to expand as a local company to even to do a project of such a complexity and high, we call it demand in terms of expert technical requirement. But as my earlier mentioned, as a trained engineer myself, I have the advantage of looking very beyond what is the requirement of the tender and come up with a lot of innovative improvement design. For example, we mentioned about instead of doing the cast in situ structure, we went on to propose to do precast construction method. And at the same time, we also have many other innovative techniques and productivity methods, so that we can then, at that time of tender, become more cost effective when we try to compete with other big contractors. And we were very lucky that at the end of the competing process in the tender, we were being chosen because of our cost effectiveness, as well as our ability to display our technical knowledge and understanding of the contract. And of course, now looking back, I believe that we have done a very great job in a sense that we have developed a beautiful project. And every time for me to drive past or walk past Garden by the Bay as a whole, and in particular, we look at the super trees, which we can admire from a distance, it really makes us very proud as a local engineer and a local company that can be able to perform and contribute to the iconic sky space in Singapore, to contribute this and deliver this iconic super tree project.
Can tell that for your company, you have to balance between cost as well as also the technical knowledge of constructing this iconic landscape. Okay, so my partner has some question regarding digitalization and technology in this in this growing world. So she would like to ask you more about in the field of technology wise, how would your company promote such things?
Okay,
All right,
for
yeah, thank you.
digitalization. Okay, sorry, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. So yeah, I was gonna ask you a question about digitalization because we're living in the fourth industrial revolution, and we're seeing like how technology is the key driver that transforms all industries and sectors. So digitalization in particular is like a super hot topic. So could you share sort of how digitalization has changed the way you manage projects and maybe the way your company works?
Okay, firstly, digitization is something that is present and is very effective in the current construction technology platform. One of the digitalization that we have is called BIM, Building Interface Modeling. And what we do now is that we can able to so-called build a building from scratch in the planning and in the digitalization platform. We can build a building now using all the various 3D software tools so that we are able to then make sure that the building has firstly designed with the intended requirement and all the various different traits that is associated with the building are properly coordinated. And all these crashes of the, for example, the design or the services or the certain review of the certain design parameter can all be then digitalized and built up with use of the BIM models. And from there, engineers or even developer or architect can look at the building without really have to be like long ago when it's built, then you can see it. So everyone can then now do a 3D virtual tour, in fact, to understand a certain function of the building under design before it's being built. And also we are able to, in that aspect, make sure that we do not have to make rework or even make mistake during the construction process. And then we have to start to demolish or do a lot of abandoned work. As you all may know, every time you pass by a construction project, you hear a lot of hacking noise because there are a lot of things in the previous construction old-time technology where there is always have this idea of we build and hack later and then try to incorporate some of the services. So in the new modern digitalization technology platform, we are able to resolve all this and we plan for it before we even start building them. So to that end, we have in fact created number one, productivity improvement. At the same time, we also will be able to be more environmental friendly or sustainable because there's a reduction of the abortive works. There's a reduction of wrong design that caused a lot of other changes to the projects. And all we can capture before even we start the work with the new digitalization technology that is in place. So at the moment, we are even able to explore, we call it the 4D, 5D, 6D, 6-dimension design of a construction project.
All right, yes, thank you so much, Mr. Lee, for explaining how technology can really transform the way we're doing construction. It's really more efficient and more sustainable. There's less waste, and it's really incredible. So speaking more about sustainability and in relation to the construction industry, could we like pick your brain a little to learn more about some of the low carbon initiatives that are applicable to the construction industry? For instance, some of the common ones are the use of RCA, WSG, even green concrete. But what are some other ways we can look into and explore based on your experience?
Yes, we're trying to reduce the carbon footprint of our construction project. So at the moment, we are looking into a lot of prefab technology, prefabrication. For example, at the moment, if you look at some of our HDB BTOs project, which is easily identifiable, we have this PBBC construction methodology, prefab precast volumetric construction. In other words, the construction of the project will be done off-site. The modules are actually done in the factory with very good environmental control. And we are able to then reduce the carbon footprint and be more sustainable and environmental friendly when we start constructing the physical project on site. So that will also helps in the long-term sustainability in construction, as then we will be able to reduce also the manpower requirement on site. And we are able to, in a way, instead of what people always think construction have to be under rain and shine, we are able to prefab all the construction module in a controlled environment in a factory, and we will then install on the ground on site, reducing the requirement for workers, as well as increasing the productivity. And in that way, we are able to reduce a lot of carbon footprint on the ground, on the site itself.
I see. Yes, I think that's really incredible. We can really see how the construction industry is really trying to become more sustainable. And this is like all in time for SG's green plan, which is coming in play by 2030, where Singapore will truly transform into a greener and more sustainable city. So Lee Ting also has some more questions from the audience. So Lee Ting, over to you.
Okay, so I'm also curious, Mr. Lee, so like with technological advancement like virtual reality and also like artificial intelligence made possible, so will these technological advancement be used in the areas of future urban planning?
Definitely, yes. Of course, about urban planning is in a much bigger scale. With virtual reality and AI, I think a lot of design simulation and projection can be done even more efficiently. That's why we mentioned about our ability to digitalize all this planning process and doing ability to capture all the for example, unforeseeable issues or matters that need to be coordinated. We are able to then now use digitalization AI to help us to resolve all these issues way before the beginning of the planning stage. So that once we are in the planning stage, we then can continue to use the digital tools, the AI tools, to continue to help us to identify all the problems so that we can resolve them in the digital format rather than actually go on to the actual construction or the planning process where mistakes are made or even works have to be aborted due to the wrong parameter being considered.
That's quite incredible to hear how technology can actually help us in the future urban planning. So I've also read up about the milestone of Expand and how it was established from its humble beginnings to a BCA A1 category company in a span of 10 years. So I have a question from the ground. Okay, so how is Expand dealing with more foreign competition entering the construction industry in Singapore? And what do you think is the unique factor for Expand Group?
Okay, I think this is a very good question. And in fact, a lot of audience would like to know to that end, the future or the challenges of Expand, or rather local companies or local engineers can excel in the future. So my quick answer is that to begin with, Singapore has started to look at our own build capabilities as a country, because we recognize that as Singapore progress, we have started building MRTs, even airports, infrastructure projects, and some of them as critical one as for example water sand line, water reclamation project, and so on. So all these projects requires I would say local engineers to continue to be able to be around to maintain all the infrastructure. So the government has started to actually look at Singapore build capability. To that end, I think Expand has, being a local company, we have now started to be given a lot of opportunities to take on more critical infrastructure project. For example, at the moment, Expand is given a project in Tuas as part of the Tuas Nexus facility, where we are having, we call it waste to energy facility project. And we are currently involved in the building of a mega substation, which requires a lot of technical input. And we are able to joint venture with a project with the international construction company Siemens. And together we present our solution to our client, in our case here, NEA, and they accepted our proposal and engaged us to undertake the construction of the substation. So to that end, we have two answers for the future. One is, of course, we need to develop as a local company or even as a Singapore, as a country, our own build capabilities from being able to take on projects that used to be only able to be done by, for example, foreign company. So expand earlier on, I mentioned we are very proud that we were being able to given the project even for Supertree, such a highly technical, challenging contract to be given to a homegrown company like Expand. And we have done well, and we have given the direction and the confidence to most of the agency that actually a Singapore homegrown company can also achieve the requirement and technical ability to perform. That's one. And the second part is also expand, grow, or a lot of homegrown company grows. They can also start to be able to be on par and invite overseas companies. For example, in the case of our project in Tuas, we actually joint ventures with overseas company and to join hand. And to that end, we are talking about also technological transfer and also building up further building capabilities on our side. So we would not want to see sometime overseas contractor as a competition, but we look upon ourselves whether our own ability, when we start building up from scratch, and to where we are we able to continue as a local homegrown company to push for technological improvement and embrace technological and even the current, for example, digitalization tools to ensure that we are continuing to be able to perform well. And with that, we are also able to build up then our reputation and track record to joint venture with other foreign companies to continue to embark on even more bigger and massive integrated projects.
That's a very interesting insight into how competition can actually is a kind of fuel to like the company's growth and development. So something more closer to our hearts will be a construction a project that is by Expand Group that is currently located in NTU. I would like to find out within the NTU compound itself, there is NTU Youth Olympic Village. So I would like to find out like what are some of the consideration and challenges back then when your company is trying to construct this Olympic Village?
Okay, I think that is way back, I believe year 2010. Those times, everything is quite raw. So when we were given the project to be involved in the Youth Olympic Village, we were very excited. And of course, I being an alumni of NTU, I'm even more excited because that means that I have the opportunity to come back, not just to work on the project, but also back to where we call home, to give our part of our contribution to, in a way, make the campus even more appealing and functional. So what we did is that when we have the opportunity to be involved in the Olympic Village, we actually put in a lot of effort and engineering input to what we can do in terms, again, on sustainability, environmental friendly measures, as well as also we took into many consideration that we are working in a very highly public area where our work should not cause more inconvenience to any of the user. So those are the critical challenges that we have during the time when we are doing the Youth Olympic Village.
I see. Thank you so much, Mr. Vaughn, for that. So we have a few questions flowing in from the audience, and
Sure.
I think they're particularly interested in digitalization and sustainability in the construction process. So these next few questions will be circling back to those themes.
Sure.
So for digitalization, right, can you sort of share how it has helped to optimize or streamline the construction process? Like other than just visualization and planning phases, which you shared earlier on, what about the procurement phase or like resource optimization in terms of manpower and construction machinery?
Okay, that's why we all mentioned earlier on about building up strength and sustainability. The critical management approach of a construction company is on how to always, number one, we always call it as active management. One of the key reasons why Expand could be a bit more successful because we believe in active management in all levels, at all levels. For example, if you have a worker that is able to even think that I can help the company to close the tap, so to save the water, being active managed at all levels, even to that level of the workers' involvement, I think the company will be a lot more efficient and effective. And being more efficient and more effective, we will be able to create a lot of sustainable solution to how we approach building, construction, management, in terms of dealing with the earlier mentioned about procurement, as well as support and contribution by our various subcontractors and suppliers. One simple business approach is, number one, if you are able to have a very efficient organization, there will be many subcontractors and suppliers who would like to join your successful wagon so that they can enjoy your good management, and they will be able to also become more efficient and effective under your project. And to that end, of course, the efficiency will translate to productivity and also better margin. So when it comes to procurement, chances is that we are able to achieve a few percentage of advantage over our competitors, knowing that the supplier or subcontractor, when they join us in our contract, they can be much more efficient and more effective. And on the other hand, because of the efficiency and effectiveness that we every day at all levels has tried to achieve, we are able then also translate that to individual productivity improvement. Most of the time, I would say that construction is always some kind of work where people take it for granted that it's okay to work on some part of the project and make mistake. You start to do hacking and rework, and or even worse, redesign. So all this kind of mentality has to be changed right at the bottom so that we are able to capture issues and problems so that we can reduce our, what we call it, wastages, and also our ability to then control our margin and further improve with our productivity. So all in all means that in construction, as long as you are able to active manage, number one. Number two, always be more, think of methods and ways to be more efficient and more effective. And last but not least, always come to a mindset that you must have sustainable solution so that this kind of productivity efforts can always be continued from one work to the other, from one project to another project, and not being wasted in terms of loss in knowledge and also the loss of experience. So about digitalization in this aspect, then we are able to look at digitalizing our knowledge and digitalizing our method and procedures so that you can be able to pass down to all projects as well as the next projects.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Ron, for that. So there are three sort of main lessons and messages that we can really learn from you. And from construction, it's really to have active management because it's really important to be more efficient and always to bear in mind sustainability. So speaking about wastage sort of sustainability and controlling margins, When it comes to designing construction projects like buildings and stuff, do you think designing for disassembly instead of demolition will reduce buildings' EOF carbon footprint?
Can you repeat again your question?
Absolutely, yes. So the question is, for when you look at construction projects, when you look at like the design, the blueprints, when we design for disassembly instead of demolition, will this help to reduce the building's EOF carbon footprint?
Okay, to this end, I must say that every design of a building has its lifetime. As you may ask, why we want to demolish a building rather than reassemble, or we call it alteration and addition. Sometimes as the technology has improved and also the needs of use has changed, it could be more efficient to tear down a building and rebuild, for example, to a new specification. Then I believe then your next question is that how do we then make use of the building that we demolish to reduce carbon footprint, for example? So actually in this instance, some of the building or most of the building demolished, for example, the concrete is being reused to make new concrete for the new building. All right, the rebar or the steel that we use, that way we demolish and we can actually reuse for recycle and for the new building. So in a way, when we demolish a building, it doesn't mean it's a total waste of resources or materials. Most of the time in Singapore now, we actually do recycle them and they have a new life in a new building.
I see. So the whole sort of demolition equals waste is sort of like a myth that people need to understand and like realize that demolition can, you know, lead to recycling and they can have like a new life in new buildings. So that's really great to hear. So I think Li Ting has some questions from on behalf of prospective students. So Li Ting, you can go ahead and ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. So I have some questions from the prospective students. So what do you think are some of the soft and hard skills that a prospective engineering student will need to acquire in taking up engineering as a field of studies? So and how does this prepare them well in the future workplace? How does the skills that they need to acquire prepare them well?
Okay, to begin with, I would like to share when you do an engineering degree or in specific a civil engineer, or I'm a civil engineer, so I speak for it. It's not that you have to be an engineer even after you graduate getting an engineering degree. Being trained as a civil engineer, even to begin with, is a very great experience to prepare you for your future careers that you would like to take up. As an engineering student, what we learn is to think and look at matters or dimension with very clear perspective. We were being taught how to think in terms of numbers, in terms of physics, and in terms of how to rationalize things in a methodological way. So this kind of training is very valuable. And I like to share very much because at the moment, if you allow me to share as an entrepreneur, the key is that I'm not just being an engineer by training, but the training process of being an engineer also give me a very good perspective about how to run a business. That's why as a trained engineer, you are very welcome, even to in any other corporate industry. I mean, I really corporate world in any other industry. And you will see many engineers trained being CEOs of many other various industries because of the training that they go through and giving them a very good foundation of how to approach issues or approach problems in an engineering way. So to begin with, of course, you choose an engineering degree where you really will be very well trained in terms of how to approach in now and in future, how to approach issues and problems in an engineer manner. But of course, then second part is about whether would you be keen to do an engineering career. Again, today, I hope I have ability to share with you as an engineer by training, we have a lot of, firstly, a lot of opportunities. It is not a industry where we are very limited in any scope of work. In fact, I share that in Singapore or in the world or in a bigger space of what we are now, as engineers, we have a lot of possible exposure, and you have many dimensions to go just to do your career and start a career. And of course, following my own experience is that with engineering experience and also with your technical knowledge, it's good possibility that you also can create a business out of it. I understand a lot of audience would talk about trying to become a founder or a startup company, or be it join a startup company and start from there. But yes, actually, you can also become a founder of a startup company because you're an engineer by training. And now as an engineer, you also can become a startup of a company that is related to engineering. To that end, I think we have another line that is doing on nanotechnology, and he became a very well-established entrepreneur that has this nanotechnology company that do very, very well. So it is important to understand that as a choice of going to do an engineering degree doesn't mean that firstly you are restricted to become an engineer. You are actually more than welcome in many other industry to become their more core management staff as well. And at the same time, you also can make an opportunity to do a career out of the engineering course that you study, as well as establish, even like myself, found a company, and from there you are able to develop not just a career but also a business out of this.
Oh, definitely engineering, not just in like after you graduate, you not just engage in engineering work, but it also open doors to other fields as well.
Exactly.
So also in your sharing session, you mentioned that there are so many different industries available for the civil engineers to venture on, from airport engineering, coastal and marine engineering to railway construction. So the choices are actually limitless. So with these choices made available for our prospective students, personally, which industry do you think is the most challenging and why?
I think at the moment, of course, we have this, we call it the coastal engineering because of the rising sea level. So this is something that I think will be an issue that even will be even more critical in the next 50 to 100 years. So I think this is one of the very critical, challenging environmental problems that Singapore have. And like I say, it is not evident or very clear as in why it will affect us now, but it will be very evident and it will be very clear in the next 10, 20, 50 years, for example. So to me, then I think this is an area of engineering that I think people can take it as a challenge, because in the useful life, especially the young engineers that are going to be trained, they will probably see this in their lifetime.
I see. Thank you so much, Mr. Ron, for that. So we have time for just one more question. So Mr. Ron, you have clearly made a mark in the construction industry here in Singapore. So do you have any advice for future engineers that look up to you and your company who also want to make a mark in engineering?
I think I have shared, the important thing is always, firstly, you understand that you will be trained as an engineer. This is definitely a course that I always recommend to anyone that want to be trained, so that you can have a very measurable or methodological approach to look at how problems can be solved as an engineer by training. And secondly is, I mentioned earlier, there's a bout of opportunities, whether be it after you will be continuing your engineering career, or even you will be embarking in other industry. The opportunities is boundless, and there is a lot of, we call it the advantage of being a trained engineer. So to end the so-called presentation, I would like to also share. I also have encouraged my son, which will be joining, I think, NTU Engineering in the coming year as a first-year student. So that actually speaks a lot. That firstly, I'm very happy that I'm able to share with my children about how engineering has benefited myself and even for them. And I'm also very happy to share that they are also look at it from a very positive perspective, and they are going to embark in this route as well.
I see. That's absolutely wonderful to hear, Mr. Von. I think, NTU College of Engineering would be very happy to have,
Yes.
more people like you joining NTU and creating like a strong alumni and future engineers as well. So genuinely, thank you so much, Mr. Lee, for sharing your wonderful insights on your personal journey and also your corporate company's milestones in building a more sustainable future for us to live in and creating a more beautiful Singapore in the future. So that is all the time we have today for today's Techignite speaker series titled Supertree Grove, Rising Above Challenges.
Thank you.
So it's
Thank
truly,
you, everyone.
yeah, absolutely. It's been truly inspiring to hear from you today. So on behalf of Techignite and NTU's College of Engineering, we would like to thank you for your time that you have spent with us here today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
So it truly has been a pleasure speaking to you. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that this event has ignited your interest in how engineering drives the creation of the most beautiful and iconic landmarks around the world. So as you can see, engineering can be the gateway for students who want to be part of the future of modern and stunning landmarks. So for our pre-university audience members here today who would like to find out more about studying engineering at NTU, we have 2 upcoming sharing sessions. So we have one tomorrow on the 6th of January by the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering, as well as one more next Tuesday on the 11th of January by the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. So do sign up for those if you're interested.
We still have upcoming talks in our speaker series, so if you want to learn more about how the stunning Marina Bay area keeps it cool in hot and sunny Singapore, you can hear from SP Group this Friday on 7th of January. Following that, we also have another talk on 11th of January with the founder of Sunset Group, with Mr. Frank Puang. We'll share more about his own entrepreneurial journey and how his company is taking the energy market by storm. So do sign up if you are interested. Do check out our NTU Techignite website or follow our official Techignite Instagram to find out more about these fun and engaging events organized especially for you. We will see you next time. Goodbye.